All right, the Race to World First is entering the final stages here as Liquid has finally taken out old Muggsy after a couple hundred, 150 goals.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we didn't know. Like Kalamazoo and I were casting today. We actually didn't know if it was even going to be doable. We were kind of speculating that they might not even have the damage for the phase 2 check. Liquid went back and forth between 4 and 5 healing for extended periods of time. They changed their P1 strat over and over again. We actually didn't know what the strat they were going to go with. Eventually, they just settled on the strat that they used on the PTR. How they actually started the fight whenever they went dark the other day. They tried a bunch of different stuff, but ultimately the PTR strat prevailed, and they were actually able to get the boss down while 5 healing, which is incredibly impressive by Liquid.
Yeah, I've heard there were some cooking happening this morning that I guess probably we'll talk about in this video just because it's still not been killed by Echo yet, but they had some ideas for how to do this boss that would have been kind of crazy. They didn't end up actually implementing, but yeah, it worked out. 149 pulls, I guess, is the total pull count for this thing, so highest pull count of boss this tier, which is good. I'm glad it's higher than Styx and Sprocket. I think it would have been kind of unfortunate if it had been lower, but definitely a hard 150.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting point because I don't know how long it's necessarily going to take Echo to kill this boss. Once they have the blue, because they're actually doing a very different strategy as well, particularly for their phase 1. So what is it going to look like for them?
Right. Will they adapt to the Liquid strat, having seen that it works, or will they be like, oh, ours will work too?
Yeah,
and that's not a difference, right?
The major thing that I think that helped Liquid here was their bloodlust timing and their phase 1 damage. So they basically had Nick on this druid sitting in Moonkin form, just like wrathing the boss, DPSing the all of P1. But what that allowed them to do is then have a lot more damage for the P1 pushing the boss to 40%, and allowing them to save their 2-minute CDs for 1 minute and 15 seconds, for the 5-minute and 15-second time that you push into P2. That way, everybody's cooldowns are up. Going into phase 2,
right?
They press that bloodlust,
and then you get them again at the end of P2.
Exactly, and they get them again at the end of P2. Which, if you're pressing them on cooldown naturally, you were only going to get 1 set during P2, and it would be kind of a jank time, right? It'd be like 6
minutes, but they used to be lusting there, but it's kind of awkward. It's like after the 3rd charge.
Yeah,
a lot of other stuff is going on there, so. Yeah, much better strategy this way.
Yeah, the fight ends up being like a hard 8 minutes on the Enrage, which was found out within the last 24 hours by first Echo. Actually, they made it to the Enrage first, and I think that once Liquid saw that it was going to be 8 minutes, they knew that they needed to change their strat pretty heavily.
Yeah, a crazy end to the fight as well. It's sort of got that Raglan thing where the Enrage cast is longer on Mythic than it is on the lower difficulty as well. Which I always think is kind of cool to do. It means you have to actually deal with the last set of Crawler Mines and Frost Shoes, right? You're not just DPSing down the boss and ignoring this mechanic overlap at the end. Because you can see the Frost Shatter Boots come out. Everybody has to still clear those. And then you have to bring them through these mines and actually successfully not get frozen because you still need to do more damage to the boss. And then it starts this final cast here of the Double-Minded Fury. And they barely even got the start of this cast, and that thing's like 15 seconds.
I mean, look at how much HPS their healers are doing right here. They're all over 3 million HPS, and they could have done way more too. Like this is a fight where your healers have to absolutely just carry your entire guild.
Yeah, absolutely. It was nerfed today.
Yeah. So how big was this?
I would say moderate, pretty moderate to small on the scale of nerfs. It's very possible that it wouldn't have died today without it. But so basically, they took away these Moxie stacks during the intermission. This ended up being 45 seconds during which the boss doesn't gain these 9 additional Moxie stacks for 9% more damage. And the boss usually starts at around, it's making that push in the low double digits of Moxie. And so it's going to come out now, instead of at 20% increased damage, it's going to have 10% increased damage, something like that at the start of that phase. So it equates to the boss source damage doing roughly like 6% less damage than it would have done over the course of that phase, because this is additive with itself. So each stack is a, and also a lot of the damage in that phase is sourced from other enemies, right? So this isn't actually nerfing the damage of Flagio goons, of the mines, the mine explosions, the mine soaks. Those aren't sourced from the boss. So it's, basically, maybe it's something like a 4 or 5% P2 damage nerf, something like that. I haven't looked at the actual logs, but something like that. Another big thing that came in the middle of the day was a half spark got added because there was an exploit that let people, or it was a bug, right? You could do this accidentally, but you get an extra half spark if you created your full spark and then turned in the quest. That normally when you have one first half spark, you can turn in a quest to get another one. And what happened is if you created your full spark, you could still turn in that quest and you just wouldn't have any half spark for it to take away, but it would still give you 2 half sparks. And so you could have had 2 this week. And they basically just made it now. So everybody gets this. Although apparently the exploit, anybody who did that bug also got this free half spark. So hopefully Blizzard has time until the reset to actually identify all of those players and make sure they don't get one next week. And then we're all good. Everybody will be 2.5 next week. So
yeah,
it's fine.
Okay, so in addition to that, how does this relate to Race World First? Whenever we were looking at item level yesterday, Liquid ended up gaining with this new craft. They upgraded a lot of 636 pieces with embellishments. Those, their average guild item level went up somewhere in the order of like an item level. I think maybe a little bit over an item level even. For Echo, they only gained like 0.2 of an item level because most of them were wearing hero track gear anyways. But what they gained was an embellishment. So
it's pretty much equivalent, right? The fact that the 2 guilds chose the different options means that they're pretty much equivalent. And now they're both on the same. Although, of course, a lot of players made decisions that are now suboptimal retrospectively looking at this.
Everybody did that,
yeah. Both Liquid and Echo ended up, they would have crafted 2-handed staffs in a lot of cases on some people, or not staffs, but like, 2-handed melee users, for instance, probably would have done 2-handed swords, that kind of stuff. And now they didn't do that because they sent their crafts already this week.
So now, over there, walking with my head, Liquid is currently pulling Mythic Gallywix.
Yeah, going dark.
Yep.
As expected, with a kill this late into the night.
And people have stated time and time again that Mythic Gallywix probably has a secret phase. Why don't you explain why most people are speculating that this boss has a secret phase?
So there are a lot of factors that lead people to think this boss has a secret phase. Here you can see basically this is the encounter journal over on Wowhead, and it's just got an intermission to start the fight, and then one phase after that. Now, there's never been an end boss with 1 intermission and 1 phase. It also, I don't think there's ever been an end boss that starts with an intermission. Has there? Maybe there has, but
maybe Gul'dan. I think
it's not really still phase 1. It's just like does all of the.
It's technically a phase 1. You could probably classify it as an intermission.
There's not actually a huge difference between an intermission and a phase and these sorts of things. I guess usually in intermissions you can't damage the boss's HP meaningfully, and that's true in this one if it's like the heroic intermission, right, where it's shielded and you're breaking a shield.
Yeah, okay.
So that might be the distinction that makes sense here, but we don't know exactly what this looks like yet. Well, we know. You guys don't know exactly what this looks like yet. Yeah. But the reason everybody thinks there's a secret phase of some kind on this fight is it would be weird to have a 1 phase end boss. That's not happened since, I think, Classic. I don't even know it happened during Classic. I don't know what the Classic bosses were like, but something back then would be the last time they've done like a 1 phase end boss. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. I think it would be cool to do one. If you do it well, I think that could be sweet. But it would be weird. So that's part of the reason people are thinking that. The other thing that makes people think that is that there have been datamined abilities that people are talking about having seen on this boss. Now, I haven't seen anything publicly about this, but I've heard people publicly talking about the fact that they're like the Race to World First guilds have datamined this. There are different abilities that are unattached to enemies, which often happens when Blizzard has an ability that was deleted, right? It's like, oh, we think the boss is going to have this ability. Okay, no, scratch that. But these abilities have still been getting tuning changes in recent builds of the game, which historically, unless they're doing a really intricate red herring thing, usually when that happens, they are attached to the boss. They just haven't been discovered yet.
And I actually asked Squishy this week on our podcast, like, why don't they just encrypt these abilities that might be attached to like a secret phase or something like that? And he said basically Blizzard can't tune abilities that are hidden behind an encryption. Those always get kind of shown whenever they're being tuned behind an encryption. So whenever Blizzard has to make like changes, right? Like they do tuning classes to bosses prior to the Race War First guild seeing them. That kind of flags it as on some of these spell diffs these Race World First analysts are the spell diffing against. And I think that those players, it's an assumption that there's going to be a secret phase. They're playing like there's going to be a secret phase. I also think there's like an absence in information in the Dungeon Journal, which kind of also makes people believe that there's going to be a secret phase.
Yeah, so that's what we are expecting with Gallywix. We'll, of course, a lot more tomorrow. Hopefully, Echo will join Liquid at 7 of 8, and we'll be able to have both guilds progressing the end boss again for a really tight finish in the race. But I think even if they don't, there's a good chance that Liquid will stream without going dark tomorrow. I think we will have We will see Gallywix. By this time tomorrow, we'll have seen Gallywix polls one way or the other, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. That's going to be it for our Race World First recap. Day 11. This race is going longer than it was going.
Yeah, it's nearing the end, though. I think that the chances of this going to the third reset have dropped precipitously with Muggsy dying today.
Yep.
I think it's definitely, it's probably like 80-20 now that it dies this reset.
All right. Shout out Wowhead.
Adios.
Goodbye.